Hello, everyone. My name's Ketevan. Welcome back to my channel. You're probably here because you came from Anne's channel. I'm here with Anne Novella. We are co-hosting along with Steve Donahue, Doom Stopper Doom. And for one of our door stoppers, we buddy read the Thorn Birds. So we kind of talked about what the book is about and sort of the beginnings of the book over on her channel. So if you are coming from my channel, definitely go check out part 1 on her channel first. But now we're going to get into part 2. And I want to talk more about the Catholic Church because even though I said that was the most boring part of the book, that definitely is a central theme, obviously. Like, the whole reason that Ralph and Maggie can't be together is because he's already committed to the Catholic Church and, he's married to the church, blah, blah, blah. And, of course, as like a not super religious person, I'm like, look, God doesn't want you there if you don't want to be there, for sure. They're like, even though we spent quite a bit of time getting into Father Ralph's head, I still don't really quite understand his reasoning for choosing ambition and success at the end. Of course, in the beginning, it's tempting to all of a sudden be like everything you had planned for your whole career. But then later on, when you're like, I could have her if I really wanted, why am I still choosing this? We definitely don't, at least I didn't get a strong sense. Did you get a sense, Anne, of maybe like what he was prioritizing or thinking,
Oh, he
or
was a career man
just
above
that's it, just
everything.
pure ambition?
He loved her, but he loved the power even more, and
Mhm.
it's a whole show, with the clothes and the gold.
True,
And
yeah.
if you have you ever been to the Vatican?
No, actually.
It's impressive.
Yeah, just
It's
in that environment.
impressive,
Yeah.
and yeah, it's world power.
True, yeah, like
And love, uh, physical love, it always dies in a way or becomes plain. But
mhm,
power, you never get used to power.
mhm.
I think that's the real reason. And of course, he has set up his, his mind to become. He always wanted to become a cardinal. He was always, and even a pope, if it was possible.
Mm,
So he was
right.
very ambitious. Even if
Hmm.
when he was a priest at Urgida, the relationship he had with what was her name, the elderly lady,
Oh, Mary Carson?
yeah,
That, yeah, it was just to
it, to
get
get to
her
her money
blessing.
too, in a way.
Yeah.
And he inherited everything,
Mhm.
and he needed that money to rise quickly in the echelon. So I don't think it was ever on his mind to leave the church for Maggie.
Yeah. But then, so, okay, I completely agree with you. But then there's a point, I don't remember exactly when it is, where he returns back and he's not in priest clothing at all. He's in regular, like, riding clothes, I think. And I think somebody's kids are like, oh, he's a cardinal. You have to kiss his ring. And he's like, no, 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 you don't have to kiss my ring. Like, um,
Hmm.
let's not do that here. So do you think that represents him sort of moving away from valuing that kind of that kind of lifestyle or that kind of like power?
Yeah,
Or do
but
you
it
think it's just
was
because he's
to
one
do
of those,
something else. So
so
he
he's like,
had
I'm not.
to, yeah,
Yeah.
he had to physically separate him from his day
Mm,
to day life to be able to do what he was going to do.
right. Okay. So you think it was just like a temporary pause in what his
Yeah,
real life was and
yeah,
not
yeah.
like
Yeah. It was
fundamental
just
shift
a very good holiday.
or a good holiday. So yeah. So I mean, yeah, I don't, because it happens at the beginning of the book, but I don't want to spoil exactly what it was. But you already mentioned that he inherits a lot of money,
Yeah,
and I guess we can say that part of that inheritance was because he sort of betrayed some people. Like, he wasn't super wrong, but he wasn't also super right either. It was kind of like very gray zone.
he was
And
ambitious.
yeah, he was doing what he had to do, basically.
Mhm.
But then what I found, I don't even remember when it happened in the book, but at a certain point she mentions that, actually no, I do remember, it was post World War II, because all the men were coming back from back to Australia. They had fought in the war, and they were like, "Yo, we just fought in this war for you. We're gonna need a life," you know?
Mm.
And so basically the government was cutting up all of these big estates, and sort of subdividing it, and you know, buying it back from the owners and then giving it to returned veterans who needed something to do. And they had done this in World War One, and it was a miserable failure because they didn't teach any of these people how to
How
live,
to farm.
how to
Yeah.
farm, how to raise animals. And so basically they all failed, and then the original owners could just buy it back for like dirt cheap because they were destitute because they had completely failed. But then in World War II, the government was like, okay, we're going to do it better this time. And basically that didn't happen, and everyone could keep their individual land plot and like live off the land and everything. And because of the way Father Ralph like finagled things, we'll say, that didn't happen to Dragita. And it was able to stay, I think it was like over 250 acres of
Oh
land,
yeah,
like massive amounts of land. And
250,000 acres. Huh?
yeah, sorry, 250,000 acres of land, like ridiculously massive. And it never got cut up, and it always stayed in its entirety, which was you know, post World War II, there were a lot of like social changes happening, I think, everywhere in the Western world. And then they were just able to sort of be like, nope, we're just gonna stay the same and nothing's gonna
But
change here. And it was kind
it
of
was, but uh, then it was property of the church.
right. Yeah. And that's why they could avoid it.
Yeah.
But the actual like residents didn't really change. It didn't change their lives. So they were sort
No.
of insulated from that massive social shift,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
during the war periods, because it was just like, no, we're not
Mhm.
gonna have to do that.
No.
And they sort of buffered them from reality a bit.
Mm.
And so do you think that, sorry, what's my question? I don't know. So do you think, you know, because I always imagined that first, you know, decision that Father Ralph made to sort of like make that all happen as like a huge betrayal, that what I was convinced it would come up later on, and that he would eventually have to admit to Meggie what he had done and like kind of the repercussions, and it never really came up again. So why do you
No.
think that was?
I think they never questioned him.
They just never got suspicious.
No.
And he never felt guilty enough to share, I
No.
suppose. Yeah.
No.
And I guess that maybe more speaks to his character of like,
Yeah.
I'm like, no, he's like, no,
He
that's
was a diplomat, you know.
yeah, wouldn't give any
He
information. Yeah. But I don't know, were you thinking it would come up again in the future?
no. Yeah, it could be. But there weren't any critical voices in that family.
True.
Never. They
Mm.
never questioned
Oh, that's so
behavior.
true. Like, because when it happened, I remember the dad was like, "This is great," and everyone was like, "Is it?" And he's like, "Yeah," and they're like, "Okay, yeah, it's great."
Yeah,
Very
I think
cool.
the dad didn't want the responsibility. He just
Mhm.
wanted enough money to live, and because of course, if you talk about millions, and that's why millionaires, like lotto millionaires, often fall into deep debt because they don't
Mhm.
know how to handle money or that big of big
Yeah.
sums of money. So, well, I think the father was like, "Oh yeah, I'm happy with what I have now because they could live very comfortably." And now a modern person would say, "Hey, come back here."
Not fair.
No, and yeah, it's they didn't question it,
Mm.
and because he was also he was smart enough though that whenever they needed money, he was very generous.
Mm.
He was
Right.
very
Father
generous.
Ralph was generous,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah,
He
yeah,
never
yeah.
made them feel like, "Oh, this isn't a good deal for me," because
No,
he knew
no,
that
no.
lawyer was in the background being like, "You should
And
test the will."
no, no, no.
Yeah.
And uh, although he was very generous to them, in their mind, it didn't cost anything.
Right, when you're talking about, like, 15 million, it's, like,
Yeah.
literal drop in the bucket, like,
Yeah, yeah. So we're
quarter of a
talking
drop.
about a couple of thousands
Yeah,
dollars, and that
Which
he
is
paid a
really
trip or whatever, but that was it. That was
yeah,
it. He didn't.
totally.
Yeah, but they were so happy.
Right. Well, and that's the thing, because like $2,000 a year already was an incredible sum of money to
Yeah,
have,
it
and
was
that,
5,000.
well, 5,000, sorry,
Yeah,
5,000 was just like what, like you couldn't even spend that much money buying anything you wanted. So then how could you even like think about bigger amounts? Like it's just
yeah,
so
yeah.
so then do you think that then, because basically that basically is saying, do you think that the author is saying that like a bit of paternalism does us some good because they weren't in charge of anything and they just, you know, or maybe not because things didn't go so well for the family, but um
I think it's the other way around. I think she wanted to say that if you don't think critically enough, if you're not think enough, if you don't think enough about your choices you make, this is what will happen. And if you take everything for granted, this was what will happen, because at the end, they didn't fare that well. They lived their lives and they weren't hungry, but were they happy?
yeah, I was gonna say happiness is probably the missing
Yeah.
factor. And then the thornbird metaphor, isn't that like in the very beginning of the book? So that's not a spoiler, right?
No, I know that's in the book, right in the
Like the
beginning.
yeah. So basically, the thorn birds is this like a fictional bird that only sings once in its life, and it's, what is it, sing, and then it searches all over for this like big fat thorn, and
And
sings, and then it just like falls onto this thorn to basically like kill itself. And
mm,
it's like, okay, that's obviously fictional, but that's sort of the metaphor of the whole book.
mm.
And like kind of, it could go a lot of different ways, like happiness right before your downfall, or like just being frivolous and that leading to your downfall, or I don't know, what did you make of the
Or you
metaphor?
can't be happy without being unhappy, for instance.
Yeah.
Or uh, there's always a price to pay for happiness.
Yeah.
And in a way, the family took it as we work for our money and we get a lot of money in return, but it didn't give them a real sense of happiness.
Mm-hmm.
And the
Yeah.
same goes for Father Ralph.
Right.
He had his fame and he had his career and all the gold and the glitter,
Mm-hmm.
but was he happy?
Yeah. I mean, they don't. She doesn't really go into like his actual background, but the family, they came from New Zealand because they were like, I mean, really almost destitute. Like they didn't even have money for food.
Mm,
And then all of a sudden, his sister like swoops in and is like, "Oh, you can come stay with us." And he's like,
mm,
"Oh, great," because like I wasn't sure what we were gonna do like next week. And
mm,
Father Ralph, all we know about him is that he's Irish,
mm.
and presumably, what years were the Irish famine? Uh,
The
presumably he was,
potato famine.
yeah, presumably he was like a sort of cast out of Ireland related to that, or like some economic. I mean, Irish people, they only leave when something terrible happens. No, otherwise you wouldn't leave, right? But so there's some sort of like insecurity in his past where like that's why he's so attached to this ambition and success. So
Mm,
they both of them, the family and him, kind of are like, we came from nothing, so now we need the money, but then the
mhm.
money doesn't really,
Bring anything? No.
yeah, yeah.
What do you think of the third generation, the two kids?
I think I told you this in our text. Like, I just don't think she did enough to make me really care about them as
Yeah.
people. Like, which was, I think, purposeful. Because at first, while I was reading, I was kind of like annoyed. I'm like, why do I care about these kids? Like, she barely mentioned them until they were almost adults, and then all of a sudden, we're like deep into their lives, right?
Mm,
And then at the end of the book, you kind of realize why she did that, because it's not really about them. But I thought they were really like not well developed from childhood, but like as she got into their adult lives, I
mhm.
really enjoyed their characters. And I think, yeah, they played oh, and it's not a spoiler, but for the son, what was the son's name? um
Jake? No, that's the husband.
Dane.
Um,
Dane
huh?
and Justine.
Dane, yeah.
Yeah. I will say that her brother in real life, Colleen McCullough's brother, had the same fate as Dane.
Yeah.
So she used Dane as a character. Because I remember reading that and saying, like, and maybe I told you this, I was like, sometimes some things just happen in this book, and it's like the author is just making shit up and throwing it in there because it's like,
Yeah.
why would that happen out of nowhere?
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, it literally happened in her life. So once I found that out, I was like, okay, yeah, like sometimes
Mm.
life really is just
Random.
random. Yeah, like life is stranger than fiction, So,
Mm.
but yeah, I liked them. What did you think of them?
I didn't care much for them. Dane more. I like Dane though.
Mhm.
He was destined to follow his father. Um, but I didn't get the girl though. I didn't know why she was the way she was,
Mhm.
and
Well, aside from like the sort of copying of the mother-daughter relationship from her grandmother, like her
yeah,
mother
maybe,
took her away
maybe,
and
and
said,
then the mother and the grandmother, they realized that okay, we were off the right track, and they yeah
like, oops, we're all old now, and we
yeah
did not do a
maybe
good job.
we can adjust a little bit,
Mhm.
tweak our relationship a bit.
Yeah, yeah.
So yeah,
And Dane's friend, we'll call him, I did not like him at all. I did not understand why he was considered like an attractive character. Um,
mm,
and and actually this maybe brings up more of the German post World War II sort of situation, because he was like what, a German politician or something, and then he's like always
diplomat
in,
or something.
he's a
Yeah.
diplomat, but not to the UK. Like I don't know, it didn't make sense why he was always there. Like,
Mm.
don't you have your life in Germany to like attend to?
But
Um,
didn't it have something to do with
oh yeah, of course. But
father?
yeah, there was a reason, but it wasn't like a what I would call a realistic reason. Because I know
Mm.
men in high positions could do what they wanted, but surely you can't just like not work for 2 weeks out of the month to have fun. Let's put it right. Maybe not. Maybe that was
Mm.
totally permissible. I don't know.
It depends on what he wanted or who he wanted to meet during his holidays.
But yeah, like why was he German? Why was he?
He was a bit of a shady character, though.
Yeah, it was shady, and also like how did he end up friends with Dane? Like I mean they must have explained it somehow, but I don't recall what it was, and it
Mm.
was just kind of like you're just here now. And
Mhm.
for like the longest time I was like, why is this man constantly spoken about? And then of course you find out why he's constantly spoken about. And actually, accidentally spoiled myself on that one, because I even like I was reading, I was like, who is this? Did I miss why he's important? And I like Googled his like, character like description, and it's right in the description, like the spoiler part. So I was like, oh, why?
Mm.
But it was just kind of like, why would you make that choice to be with him? Why? I don't know. It was just very like, I don't know. I felt like she was an archetype of like shallow choices, because I think we can say she was an actress, right?
Mm.
And so she wanted her acting career, obviously, like I mean you have to like kill yourself to be an actor and like be successful, and she was successful, but it's not one of those, it's one of those things where you have to keep working, otherwise your career goes down the drain.
Mm.
But she was super dedicated to it, and then just like all of a sudden was like, oh no, I'm done now. Like
Yeah.
like, and it's like that seems a bit weird, like considering she was like, I understand if you're not doing well and giving up, but she was like at the top of her game.
Mm.
She definitely
Mm.
could have been like, the actress of her generation, I think,
Mm.
and just
Mhm.
randomly chose
Mm.
not to. And I mean, was it because of some meddling? Was she manipulated? You could say that, but I mean, how much can you be manipulated from one conversation? I don't think there's that much manipulation.
Yeah.
I mean, right? Like if one conversation manipulates you into something, then maybe you did really
Mm.
want
Mm.
it. I don't know.
So, but would you recommend this book?
I read something where like most people like read it when they were your age because it was like a naughty book to like, it's like, oh, so exciting, it's different, like it's an adult book that I shouldn't be reading. And I would say definitely don't read it when you're young and impressionable. But as an adult, yeah, I think it's fine. Like if you're interested in like the colonial experience in in
Mm.
Australia, then I think it is pretty, I would say, accurate. Maybe not like my first Australian suggestion, because obviously the white Australian experience isn't like maybe the most important one to read about, but it's certainly like a fun book. And I think the problematic aspects are clear to a modern reader. So it's
Yeah.
not like you'll miss it.
Yeah. 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 And
Yeah.
do you think it holds up now? Has it aged well?
Because yeah, it was technically written as, I guess, historical fiction, because she published it in
Mm.
like the 70s. And so I think if you still take it as historical fiction, then yeah.
Mm.
What do you think?
I think so. Apart from the
Mhm.
Ralph Maggie situation, which she handled actually quite well.
Mhm.
I think so. Yeah, I thoroughly enjoyed the book. Actually, it's
Yeah, I
not
know you
high
did.
literature, but it's
Right.
great. It's great fun to read. I think.
Mhm. Yeah, like, it's an enjoyable experience, and it does have, like, deeper themes in it, so it's
Mhm.
not, just light and fluffy fun, but, like,
Mhm.
so it's kind of what I would, we talk a lot about, how much we both hate popular books with each other, like, in private, and
Mhm.
this is one of those popular books where I don't think it deserves the, like, "Ugh, popular book" derision. Like, it
Oh.
is definitely, I don't wanna say popular for a reason, but popular for, like, a deeper reason than just, like, it's an enjoyable, fun
Mm.
story.
Mm.
So that I thought is quite a statement, because it's
Mm.
hard to do, like, commercial and critical
Mhm.
success. Not that
Mhm.
I don't actually know what the critics said about this book at the
I
time,
don't
but,
know.
whatever they said, it doesn't matter, because now, like, I mean, it's still, I mean,
Still,
it has a
yeah,
this is a mass, paperback, so if you got into that level, you're fine.
yeah, that's true. That's true.
Yeah, yeah. I had one more question.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I think I mentioned it earlier that I looked up what Drogheda was, because they mentioned it briefly in the book and I had completely forgotten about it. It was named after a city in Ireland that Cromwell had, like, I guess, taken over when the British were like invading Ireland. And then they named the station, the sheep station, after that. And I just thought that was so ironic, I guess I'll say, because like, I think that was like a sad day for Ireland to be like invaded by the British, and lost that city to the British essentially. And then so then they come presumably fleeing from Drogheda because the British are there. They come to Australia and
And they take it, and then
they take
they
it.
resettled Drogheda. And then just
Exactly.
they packed Drogheda, put it on a ship, and then
Yeah. And I do think that kind of reflects the general like Australian sentiment of like, well, it wasn't an invasion. Like, there wasn't a military, because I mean in like Canada and the US and stuff, like there was definitely like, you know, like battles between like armed
Mhm.
forces. And I mean, as far as I know, there weren't too many of those in Australia, if any. I think it was just sort of they sort of
Creeped
crept in,
in.
and
Yeah.
then all of a sudden we're here and we're in charge. Um, so I don't know, I just found that super ironic.
Mhm.
And it made me start thinking about like just in general what this book is saying about colonization. So I was
Mhm.
curious to hear your thoughts on that. Um,
Oh, I don't think they mentioned. Did they mention? Did she mention one Aboriginal?
no, they're completely erased from this story.
Yeah.
Yeah, and was that purposeful? Was that just like the author's perspective? I don't know. But yeah, you're right. There's not a single Aboriginal character. I mean, granted, in the 70s, I don't think. Well, actually, is that true? I think there were a lot of social movements, like Aboriginal social movements, to try to stop, all the horrible policies that were happening. But maybe not in the white perspective, like not as everyday conversation.
The men who cut the
Oh, the
sugarcane.
sugarcane. Yes. Actually, they do. Yeah, there isn't a character, but they do mention that like only the white men can cut sugarcane
Yeah.
because they're taller, or like they just do it better.
Taller, I think.
Taller. It was a very weird explanation because I'm not sure why you would need to be tall to cut sugarcane. Maybe that's like a technical detail that is accurate. But why would, I mean, if you're cutting it, wouldn't it be like down? I don't know. I don't know. So yeah, I was like super kind of, is the right word shocked? Not shocked, because obviously like it's a white Australian woman writing a book in the 70s, but the lack of awareness of the irony of like having your characters like plop themselves down and just be like, oh, we were so oppressed by the British in Ireland, so now we've come here. Maybe it was a little intentional, but I think she didn't write enough
No.
war to like make it and actually
Mm,
intentional.
mm, mm,
And maybe I was thinking, is that kind of like she's not even aware of it, but that is a statement in and of itself. Like
mm,
they come in thinking like, oh, we're the victims, we need to find a better place to live.
mm,
And it's like, you're not going to find it here because you're not doing it in an acceptable way, or like in a
mm,
morally, correct way. You're just kind of taking and stealing what you think you need and want, when in reality they didn't need all that wealth. But then they just used it, and then at the end
mm.
everything was kind of had,
Beep.
yeah, yeah, beep. Like things happened at the end, basically. um I mean, from the metaphor of the title, you can tell that like it's a bad ending, like thorn
Mm,
to the chest kind of ending.
mm,
But it is a very specific ending. So,
mm, mm,
and if I, that's the thing, if I had had that book, to answer that question of like, do I recommend it, if you've spoiled yourself or if you've been spoiled, I think it makes it much less enjoyable. So
mm.
I think it is actually important to not spoil like at least a couple of the big twists, because like you said, it's like the experience of reading it is fun. So like if you already know it's happening, then like
Mm.
actually you had read it before. So what was your
Yeah.
experience of reading it, kind of
Oh,
knowing?
but it was so long ago, because I'm a 28-year-old YouTuber. Um, it was so long ago. I only remembered the relationship with Maggie and Ralph, and all the rest around it I forgot.
Yeah, isn't that wild? That's like the
Yeah,
only thing anyone remembers.
yeah, and but that's also because of the
The
TV
miniseries.
series and
Yeah.
yeah. What was it? What was her name? Rachel Ward and Richard Chamberlain.
Yes, the very sexy priest actor. I mean, yeah, like he's very sexy. I won't lie. Like that A plus casting on that one. Because I mean,
So
you're thinking
yeah,
like, why would you be in love with a priest? And you're like, oh, yeah, I see it.
yeah.
You know?
There you go. So
Yeah.
it was, for me. It was fun to reread. I'm happy that I did, actually.
Mm.
I'm happy that I did. I would recommend it to people that when they say, "Oh, I've read that a long time ago. Oh, it's time for a reread." I would say
Yeah.
that, yeah, absolutely. And yeah, why not? It's interesting for young people too, to see how people thought in those days, and how
Mhm.
sometimes how they took everything for granted,
Mhm.
in the sense that choices were made for you,
Right.
and they agreed with that.
Yeah.
And that's something that doesn't exist anymore.
Mhm.
And that's why I really think it's important that a young person reads that with their young, they're more aware of themselves and their own choices and their own power. And it's important that they can read stuff like the Thorn Birds, where things weren't as obvious.
Yeah. I think, yeah, for young people to realize, like, because I think there's this narrative of like, you know, if you're 35, you can like become a famous whatever, and it doesn't matter if you're in your 20s and you're still not successful. And that's all true, of course, but at the same time, like your choices do impact your life.
Yeah.
You I mean, even just simply like if I decide to go down that street and I get hit by a car, obviously if I didn't go down that street, I wouldn't have gotten hit by the car. Like,
Mm.
you know, even if it's not stuff you can control, like you still have to be aware that like each choice does make some sort of impact. And I think
Mm.
pretending that it doesn't um is a mistake. And
Mhm.
I realized that's because of the pushback of like not every single choice was like destined to your future. You can still make additional choices to change that even
Mhm.
further. But yeah, I think it is like, we're in a weird part of society where we're trying to balance between that, like the freedom
Mm,
and the, I guess we'll call them
mm,
responsible choices,
mm, mm,
or what someone else thinks of as responsible, maybe.
mm. Yeah, that's
I
it.
we'll probably struggle with that as a society for like at least the next 50 years minimum. So
Yeah, that's true.
not going away, and that's probably why it feels so timeless, is because choices are hard no matter what.
That's true. So yeah.
Yeah. But to be cheesy, I would say the choice to read a book with you is never a bad choice.
Ooh.
Because I mean, like, there's certain people that like it's just easy to talk about books with. I don't know why, and you're one of those people. For me, at
Oh,
least,
thank you.
like it's just like it's simple, and like we don't really, I think, have like super in depth conversations all the time, but it's
But
always
it's necessary.
sometimes we're just sending emojis back and forth. It's just like whatever, and you get it, and I get it. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's always nice. So this was so fun talking
Yes.
more in depth than just like texting and emoji.
Yeah.
Love both styles, but the good long form is nice.
So people like and subscribe.
Yeah, I'm just so happy that I get to talk with people about books in general. Like it's like the nicest thing. I
Yeah.
sort of made this channel a bit on a whim, and I'm really glad I did. I don't know, like it's
For me, the same. It's
so
to be
nice.
able to talk about books.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because I think the whole rest of the world thinks of it as reading as like a very solitary activity.
Mhm.
And I mean, of course it can be. You could read 100 books and never speak a word to anyone.
Mm,
But really, like the best part is the talking
mm,
about it. And, it's not physically a group
mm,
activity, but the after part is the better part for me. It changes something from entertainment into like a social thing, which I think is hard to do with most entertainment.
mm.
Like, what do we
Maybe you should pick a new book that
have?
was popular in the 90s.
Ooh, oh my gosh, there's so many. Like, well, actually, I'm kind of doing that right now with Poisonwood Bible because that came out in like 1998, I think.
I
Um,
have that, Barbara Kingsolver.
and you said you should reread it, so maybe you should
Yeah.
read it and then we'll talk about it. I know it'll take you like a day.
Yeah. We'll see. We'll discuss that
Yeah,
later.
next time. Yeah,
Yeah.
for now, yeah, yeah. Thank you so much for watching, and until next time, bye.